Welcome to A Few Thoughts About, the show where we dig into thinking and how it shapes our experience of life. Each week, I share insights and observations to get you thinking. No long lectures, just quick, thought-provoking episodes to shift perspectives so that you can make the change you want to make. Let's get into it. Well, hey, before we get started, I have one slot left. I have one slot left of my one-on-one coaching. So if you are interested and haven't reached out yet, now is the time to do it. There's a link in the description of this episode. It'll bring you to a space where you can book some time with me to chat. If you've thought about one-on-one coaching, if you're interested in one-on-one coaching, if you want help with changing your relationship with alcohol or actually creating any other change in your life, now is the time to check it out. This is a totally free call. I promise you it will not be a hard sell. I am just here to talk about you, where you want to go. If it's a fit, great. If not, no big deal, but I will make sure you get off this call with some sense of next steps. So one slot left for one-on-one coaching. Go to the link in the description and I will be more than happy to chat with you about it. That is it for me. Let's start the show. Well, hello there and welcome to A Few Thoughts About the Process, Phase 4, Building. Woohoo! We did it. Friends, we're at the end of this series. So far, and if you haven't listened to the previous 3 episodes, please go do before you listen to this, right? Phase 1 is learning, right? We talk about how we can learn about this process and learn about what we're doing. Phase 2 is planning, right? Phase 3 is action, where we actually take that time off. We take a predetermined amount of time off of drinking. And now phase 4 is where we take what we learned during that duration alcohol-free and decide about what we're going to do going forward, right? So at this point in the process, you've gone through your duration, and by the way, more later on whether or not it was fully alcohol-free. Both results are totally fine. And here we are, right? We're through the duration and we're at a decision point. So you're at the place now where you get to decide how to build on the progress you've made. And I want to make a very, very clear statement about progress. Even if you've had data points, as I like to call them, or drinking days, even if you drank and you didn't want to, you are making progress, right? Even the attempt of this duration is moving you in the right direction. And I recognize that we live in a culture and a society where so many people are stuck on this idea of if it wasn't 100% perfect, it was 100% failure. That is absolutely not true. Is it possible that this process isn't moving as fast as you want it to? Yeah, probably. Like for most people, that's the case. But the fact that you are listening to this, the fact that you have gone through duration means you are going in the direction you need to be going in. And that is huge. So as we go throughout this episode, and I'm talking about next steps, these next steps apply whether or not you had data points. Right now, the decision in which one of these options you choose might be informed by the fact that you had data points. But if you did this duration, even if you drank more often than you didn't drink, you still are here. You still are showing up, and you can still take what you've learned and figure out how to move forward. So as a quick recap of what this entire process has been, right? We started out in the learning phase where we took some time to learn about alcohol and its impact on us, how it makes us feel, what our day-to-day is like, what our triggers are like. And then we moved on to the planning stage. And those two things do run somewhat concurrently, right? Like while we're learning, we can also be planning, and we're planning on how to handle triggers and how to handle certain situations and times and moments when we feel stuck, when we feel the pull, the push, whatever you want to call it, to drink, right? And so that's what we did in the learning phase and the planning phase. And what you're finishing up now is the action phase, right? That duration of time where the goal was to be alcohol free. And so here we are. And this phase I call build, right? This is where we get to build on what you've learned. And again, no matter what that experience was over this duration, you get to build, right? And so what I really want to do is reflect on, we want to reflect on your experience during the duration. What did you learn? What was it like? What do you want to move forward, right? Getting really clear. Getting really, really clear. Okay, these are the things that I enjoyed. This is what I didn't expect. Here's what I did expect. Here's what it was. Getting to understand all of this makes a huge, huge difference. And so a lot of times when we talk about a process type thing, one of the biggest things that people will ask is well, if I said I was going to do 20 days and I didn't do it alcohol free, what do I do then? Right. And I understand it. And, before I was able to quit, I had many durations that I didn't fully complete alcohol free either. But nothing here is a waste, right? There is not an element of this process that is a failure unless we stop trying, right? So even data points, even drinking are things that we can learn from. So that's what we need to do, right? So if you are at the end of your duration, you're kind of looking back, use it, treat it like the learning phase. What was a trigger? How did it come about, right? If you drank more, many days during the duration, what were the themes? What were the thoughts or emotions or situations, circumstances? How can you use that to move forward? This is so incredibly important. I talk to so many people who tell me, oh, I failed. I said I was going to do 3 days and I fucked it up and I failed. And I refuse to accept that as an answer. And it's not because I'm some hopelessly optimistic person. It's because there's always something to learn. There's always something to take and move forward, right? The fact that maybe there were some drinking days during that duration might mean you need to learn more, right? To find out more, to dig more, to see what those triggers are, right? If you find yourself able to see what those things are, then great, right? Do the work and do another duration. If you need help unraveling it, right? Maybe it was some of the deeper personal stuff we talked about way back in episode 1 of the series. You can reach out to someone, reach out to a coach, reach out to a therapist, reach out to a friend or a group, right? You have a better idea, even if you went through this duration and had drinking days, you have a better idea now of what's in your way than you did before. So use that so that you can move forward, right? There literally is no failing in this process. And I know that some people hear that and they're like, oh, well, isn't that cute? Isn't that kind of Pollyanna-ish? And no, it's not. It's reality. It's actually how life works, right? We learn how to do things by making mistakes. And as time goes on, hopefully we make fewer and fewer mistakes and we are quote unquote competent. But that competency comes through fucking up over and over and over and over and over again, right? So you don't need to be perfect to move forward. As a matter of fact, perfection doesn't really move you forward. So if you need help digging into some of the stuff, find that help. But other than that, you've got a ton of information here, so use it. So at the end of a duration, there are a few things that you can do to make a decision about what's next. And so I want to talk about these things, and then I want to talk about the possibilities, right? So the very first question to ask yourself, and I will always go through this with clients, even if I know the answers, I still want to talk through them, is how was it, right? Did you find what you expected? Was it good? Was it bad? What are some surprising things that happened that weren't wonderful? What are some surprising things that were great? Get very clear on what the experience was. How do you feel about yourself? How do you feel about your time? What are some changes you would have made, right? Get very clear on what that experience was and what you learned from it, because that's going to help you inform what happens next. Second, look ahead. What do you want in your life? Does this experience you just had, do you want more of this? Do you think more time alcohol-free is going to help you grow? It's going to help you live better? Do you think more time alcohol free will help you build the sort of life you want to build? Like, what are some ways that you want to grow? And does alcohol help or hold you back with those, right? I'm not asking you to write like huge major life goals here, although those can be very helpful. But just really kind of ask yourself, like, what sort of life do I want to have? And how does alcohol play into it? So when you can ask yourself those two questions, how was the duration, right? Get clear on what it was like, and then look ahead on what you want in your life. Now you're in a space where you can make a decision about what's next. And I recognize I'm going very quickly here through the process. But like I said, I wanted to give you a very high level overview so that you can apply these things to your journey. So where do you want to go from here, right? And there are really 4 main possibilities that I see people choose during a duration. And so I want to kind of go through those one by one and kind of talk about each one of them. So the first one is to do an extended duration, right? So maybe you just did 10 days and you're like, that was great. Now I'm going to do 15 or 20, right? The same goal applies here as what applied when you originally selected the duration, right? It needs to be an amount of time that is doable, but a stretch, but doable. And given that you just did a certain number of days, if you know you can do that, you can probably push it out a little bit, right? And so you can repeat this process as many times as you want. So say you do 10 days and you're like, you know what? That felt good. I'm going to do 15 days. And then say you do 15 days. And then you say, you know what? That felt good. I'm going to do 25 days, right? And you can keep doing this and keep doing this introspection at the end of every duration. And then you're able to really kind of put together that quite a long stretch alcohol free, or even if you have data points, but a long stretch of durations where you start to really experience like, oh, this is what life is like without having to commit to the dreaded forever, right? Because that's something that can be, well, as we've covered, quite a drag. So that's first, right? Do an extended duration. Second, and I see a lot of people choose this option, do the same duration. Like, there's nothing wrong if you just chose 5 days and you want to do another 5 days. That's awesome, right? That counts. And, maybe you had some drinking days and you want to try it again. Or maybe it just felt like, this was an unusual 5 days. Maybe you were traveling or something was different, in your routine. So give yourself the opportunity to try out the same duration again, right? The main thing here, as is with any of these decisions in which direction to go, is that it feels good. It feels like, okay, this is moving me in the direction that I think is going to be helpful. So if you feel like you'll get something out of doing another duration of the same, then do it. And just a side note on this, a lot of people have a hard time trusting themselves, which I totally understand, right? If we spend a lot of time not being super honest with ourselves or saying, that's it, I'm going to quit forever, and then not actually quitting forever, even though we mean it when we say it, we can get to this place where trust in ourselves is eroded. And so if that's you, and it might be hard, like, I don't really know what to do, trust how you feel, right? There'll be a lot of thoughts about it. So if you think, wow, the same duration and that feels good, then go with that. And trust me, like, you'll get to the end of that duration and you'll be able to make another decision, right? So first is to do an extended duration. Second is to do the same duration. Third is to go back into the learning phase. And I've had a lot of people do this, right? A big possibility is that during your duration, you learned that there was a lot more to be learned. Right? And there's no shame in this. If you remember back when I talked about the planning phase and the learning phase, I discussed the fact that a lot of people know like what triggers they have. They can rattle them off to me on a very first call. But when you actually live it, you find out more, right? And that is what could have happened to you, right? You could actually live it and be like, wow, there were way more triggers than I thought. So there's no shame in saying, you know what, I'm going to go into the learning phase again, because in the learning phase, I'm going to be able to make a duration and make a plan for a duration that makes so much more sense. So if that's you, great. And this is progress, by the way. I want to be very clear. A lot of people are like, oh, this is going backwards. No, it's not, because you learned that there was more to learn. So you're going to do the thing you need to do in order to learn the stuff, to keep exploring, to keep digging, to keep finding ways of learning about the triggers and learning what's coming up for you. This can take time, right? So this is an opportunity for you to say, yes, I tried that. I don't think it was where I need to go right now. There's more for me to learn. Here's where I'm going to go. And you probably know, coming out of this duration, you at least know where to start, right? You at least know, like, okay, there are things that that I need to explore. There are things that I need to have a better plan for. It's a fantastic way to start, right? So first is to do an extended duration. Second is to do the same duration. Third is to go back to the learning play phase. And then fourth is to go forward without any sort of duration. Now, you might be wondering, WTF, Scott? Like, I thought you told us that we need to have durations. And you do, especially at first, right? This forever trap, like I talked about, like forever is heavy. You don't need to fall into this. And so maybe you did this duration, or maybe you've done multiple durations and you feel like it's time for you to move in a new direction, right? If you feel like moving from I'm going to do X days to I'm taking some time off, open-ended sort of thing, go for it. By the way, for some of my clients, this works way at the beginning, right? Durations can be helpful, but even something like this can be helpful to sort of change the way it feels. So if you've gone through this and durations have felt good to you, then take some time off, try it. I don't recommend this approach for people who are just starting, right? Because of the forever trap we've talked about. But once you rack up some days, right, it can be easier to envision things alcohol free. The forever trap gets a lot easier to avoid, right? So if this is you and you did this duration and you feel like, hey, I want to not have a duration here, I do recommend a couple of things. First, just put in some check-in times for yourself. It's so easy for this stuff to kind of run away from us. So if you have the ability, maybe you put something in your calendar for, I don't know, your duration, whatever duration you just completed, like that duration down the road, if you put something in your calendar to check in with yourself on that, or maybe at a year, like just have these little checkpoints to make sure that you're touching base on how things are feeling, but you're going to know what's right for you, right? So a lot of people say, well, like, how do I know that I don't need a duration anymore? This is where I was talking about listening to your feelings. Like, listen to the way you feel. You'll know when that's ready for you, when the time is right for you. And if that's it, great. That's awesome, right? Put in some of those checkpoints, maybe put in the, like, hey, if another part of this that people find helpful is like, hey, if I find myself thinking too much about it, like, I'm always willing to move back into a duration if need be, right? If that feels better. But this can be an incredibly liberating step, right? And so those are the four, like, sort of main options. And of course, there's lots of different ones too. And this is a bit of a choose your own adventure / build your own adventure with this stuff, right? So first, do an extended duration. Second, do the same duration. Third, go back into the learning phase. Or fourth, go forward without any duration. These are all options that are available to you once you've done your duration. Now, overall, the goal here is to build on what you've learned. No matter what the first duration brought for you, you have done something incredible. Like, give yourself credit, because you're at a different place now than you were before the duration started, and you can take off from here, right? You can build from here. And so take what you've learned to create the sort of experience you want to have. I know that I've mentioned this before, but people often ask me, like, Scott, I just did 30 days or 60 days or 5 days or 2 days, right? Whatever it is, right? I just did this. Like, how do I keep this progress? And my answer is to grow into someone who doesn't drink. And what I mean by this is that doing work on yourself allows you to grow from someone who used to drink into that next version of you that never did. Like, I'm a different version of Scott than the version who drank. I'm probably several iterations down the road at this point. This is a great time if you're not drinking to dig into those personal triggers we talked about. So you might remember in the episode on phase 2, I talked about personal stuff, right? These sort of deep-seated, in a lot of cases, reasons for drinking. Like that's a fantastic thing to dig into. That's a fantastic thing to build on, right? So that is an option. If you learn things and had data points and see more triggers or more things you need to uncover, work on those things. No matter what, whether it's another duration, going back to the learning phase, or moving on to work on other parts of you, build on what you've learned. This process is magic in the sense that it goes forward, and there's never a way to do this without learning. There's never a way to do this that is a waste. So the process will continue to unfold for you as long as you stay on the path. And if you keep walking, if you keep building, I promise you're going to get to where you want to go. So there you have it, friends. That's it. That is the end of my series on the process. What did you think? Head on over to scottpiniard.com/podcast. I would love to hear from you. Did you like this? Do you want to hear more series? Do you want to hear less series? Do you want me to go do the one-off riffs I used to do? I'm happy to hear any and all feedback. I'm happy just to get a note from you that says hi. That makes me very happy as well. That is it for me. I will be back next week with another episode. So thank you for hanging out with me, and I will see you again really soon.